Federal government bans use of Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft in Nigeria's aviation industry.
Issued directives that no operator with 737 MAX 8 or MAX 9 should operate into and outside of our airports, pending the determination of the actual cause of the crash in Ethiopia and also pending the outcome of the response of the manufacturer himself.
President Buhari condoles with victims of Lagos building collapse.
Senate debates 2019 budget, seeks expansion of social intervention programs.
Significant numbers of our citizens out of poverty. The underlying drivers of the 2019 revenue projections have been adjusted to reflect the current realities.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss the security issues arising from the 2019 general elections.
But for several incidences that bordered on security recorded in some parts of the country, the conduct and outcome of the 2019 general elections could be said to have been largely hitch-free.
Now, Kieran, that's right. For instance, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, had to suspend the entire electoral process in Rivers State for the March 9th elections, owing to security challenges that arose.
All right. Now, indeed, Kingsley, there were several other security glitches that led to cancellation of results or inability of INEC to conduct elections in some areas. In fact, many staff were reportedly kidnapped and some even killed or attacked while carrying out national assignment.
Now, some analysts have linked voter apathy witnessed during the 2019 elections to some of these incidents of violence, which might have dampened the enthusiasm of the electorate to come out and vote in peace.
In fact, Kingsley, the credibility of polls cannot be separated from the security of the ballot and the electorate. And when one considers that over 50 billion naira was budgeted to cater for security during the 2019 polls, you are left to wonder what could have gone wrong.
Of course, Kirian, but don't forget also that as long as political gladiators regard election as war, there might be no end to insecurity, as it were, in the nation's electoral process. Otherwise, how can one explain the scenario of a returning officer being coerced to declare a winner in an election different from what had transpired?
That's on its own is a security challenge, Kingsley, I must say. And good enough, INEC has said that such declaration under duress will not fly. So what accounted for the security glitches of the 2019 general elections? Who were the purveyors of violence? Have they been arrested and will they face prosecution? Did the nation get value for the budget for security?
Very pertinent questions that you have raised there, Kirian. And of course, there are many more others that are begging for answers. As we today focus on the 2019 general elections and the security perspective on Good Morning Nigeria. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and it's on that note we'd like to welcome you to the program, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are broadcasting from our Abuja headquarters studios.
And I am Kieran. Good to have you join us on the program this morning. And as always, we shall bring in our other segments, which include a newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and entertainment news. But let's begin now with the morning news with Musbao Danrahab as our anchor. Hello, Musbao.
Hello, Kirian. Good morning. Kieran and Kinsley, welcome to the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has expressed extreme sadness over the building collapse housing a school in Itafaji area of Lagos State, which left fatalities, particularly small children. Special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, says the President commiserates with the government and good people of Lagos State and pledges the assistance of the federal government as may be required by the state. He charged the Lagos State government to do all that is needful so that such tragic developments do not reoccur in future. The president also sympathized with the parents and relations of the deceased, wishing them God's comforts. He also wishes the injured speedy and complete recovery. The federal government has joined other nations in the aviation world to formally ban the use of Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft into Nigeria's airports. Minister of State for Aviation Hadi Sirika announced this while briefing journalists after the meeting of the Federal Executive Council. Said this is in response to the safety concerns regarding the aircraft now being investigated.
And you know, aviation is universal. Aviation is one. There is no aviation B. And therefore, whatever affects one affects the other, because this craft will be flying in and out. So we have issued directives that no operator with 737 MAX 8 or MAX 9 should operate into and outside of our airports, pending the determination of the actual cause of the crash in Ethiopia, and also pending the outcome of the response of the manufacturer himself.
President Muhammadu Buhari says the federal government is doing its best towards correcting and reversing the terrible mismanagement experienced by the country, saying with some luck, the best of a governing APC will be good enough. The president stated this while receiving a delegation of non-career ambassadors on a congratulatory visit over his re-election for another term in office.
The problems of our foreign missions in terms of dilapidating infrastructure of both the offices and the accommodations, and the problem you have in your families, school fees, medical care, is really inexcusable. It's a terrible case of mismanagement of resources and national pride. But we are doing our best to correct the situation.
The federal government is making serious commitment to ensure that trafficked Nigerian girls in Mali are returned to the country. The good news is that they will not only be brought back, but they will be rehabilitated so that they can pick up the pieces of their lives and smile again.
Animals cannot stay in this kind of place in Nigeria. And yet these are where our young girls, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, 17, 18, 19-year-olds, this is where they stay. And they are held captive here for more than a year plus. You can see the distance from the nearest town to this place. Any girl that is brought here cannot escape. And many of them say they were told they were going to Malaysia, they were going to work with white people, they were going to clean homes, they were going to be housekeepers, they were going to be baby keepers, they are going to sell, and then they are trapped here.
Obviously, they didn't come on their own. They were deceived by the so-called madams who lured them to bringing them here to work for them. And I can assure you that we are going to go after them and they will be prosecuted. And every penny that these young girls have worked for will be returned back to them.
Now to the National Assembly, where the Senate has commenced the consideration of a 2019 Appropriation Bill. Senators observed that the budget has been carefully planned towards restoring and sustaining growth, investing in the people, and building a globally competitive economy. Senators, however, called for the expansion of a social intervention program and the allocation to agriculture.
Diversified and sustainable growth in order to continue to lift significant numbers of our citizens out of poverty. The underlying drivers of the 2019 revenue projections have been adjusted to reflect the current realities.
Efforts should be made to diversify further source of revenue, particularly in the rural areas.
Big move by the president. The quest of the budget has clearly shown by its content is to create an inclusive growth.
The word inconclusive has suddenly become phenomena in Nigeria's electoral experience, having become a subject of discourse at various fora, public and private, as fallout of a recent general elections. The House of Representatives has, in the light of this development, resolved to set up a committee to investigate it and alleged shortfalls of a recently conducted elections in Nigeria.
Has become a demon haunting Nigeria electoral system. Part of the problem of inconclusive elections is this House and this 8th Assembly. Because when we have to do things right, at that point, we see ourselves as APC. We see ourselves as PDP.
We politicians, I think we should also change our attitude towards elections. Because we always want to win an election through a do and die affair.
The entire House unites under one platform that we need free, fair, and credible election in Nigeria.
As you apparently know, some elections are inconclusive, but observations on these same elections are concluded. Local and foreign observers have made oral submissions to INEC, having observed the exercise in more than 120,000 polling units.
If you can use technology to transmit election results from the polling unit, it will build citizens' confidence in the process.
The INEC should actually ensure that the polling officials arrive there an hour before voting starts.
This debriefing exercise serves as a precursor to the more comprehensive reports that the Commission is expecting from the various groups.
That's the news for now. More news in our major bulletins in the course of the day. We'll take a break, after which we'll return with Good Morning Nigeria with Kingsley and Kirian, that is jealous of my red cap. Good morning.
Sore throat, it's often caused by bacteria and viruses. Feels like you're having a party. You need Strepsils. It soothes the pain, plus it fights the germs with 2 germ-killing actives. Double power in 1 lozenge. Bye-bye sore throat. Take Strepsils.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And on business news, the Weights and Measures Department of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment is striving to improve its revenue generation. Let's join our correspondent, Kolo Muhammad, for details.
Good to have you join us. In an interview with Business News, Director, Weights and Measures Department, Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, who called for a review of the act guiding the operations, said besides checkmating the excesses of traders who shortchange unsuspecting customers, it will boost foreign investors' confidence about the Nigerian trading environment, since accurate standardization will be achieved According to him, every aspect of the economy needs to be properly monitored to ensure strict compliance with the laid down rules of government. Mr. Muhammad Sidi advocated a review of the award of penalties for culprits.
In a year, we are capable of generating up to 5 billion if we have all the necessary requirements the department has. So you can see a department like ours generating up to that amount is a lot. I mean, it will impact a lot on the economy. And then it will save the public from wastage. Because when you buy something worth 20 kg and you are given 19 kg, the money you are paying for that extra kg you lost is a waste. It is going unaccounted for.
And equities inched up by 0.15% in Wednesday's trading amid negative market breadth as the Nigerian Stock Exchange All-Share Index appreciated by 0.15% to close at 31,360.28 basis points as against 1.02% depreciation recorded previously. Here's a graphic summary of the closing figures. And it is on this note that we wrap business news for the hour. Many thanks for watching.
Thank you, Ikolo, for that business package. Now, we are still watching Good Morning Nigeria, and next is newspaper review.
All right, we have some 6 or 7 newspapers, Kieran?
About 6 of them.
Yeah, 6 of them, plus one from which we'll be taking the editorial. And of course, reviewer Bayo Atoyebi will discuss the stories, as soon as we have read them. The story that is common to the front pages of the papers we have this morning, the stories are coming out of Lagos, where a building collapsed yesterday with a number of fatalities and, of course, some survivors from the incident. Let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Buhari Ambode mourn as collapsed Lagos building kills pupils and others. With a rider, I thought it was a bomb explosion, says victim's father. Details can be found on pages 4 and 5 of the paper. And when you take a look at the front page, you see a number of photographs there from the scene of the collapsed structure in Lagos. That took place on Lagos Island yesterday. Once again, Buhari Ambode mourn as collapsed Lagos building kills pupils and others. Then you go to the Nigerian Tribune. The Nigerian Tribune also has it as its lead story. And it says, with a kicker, Lagos building collapse. 22 pupils, others feared dead, 40 hospitalized, and many trapped. You can see the scenes of the rescue there yesterday. If we see the photographs from the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, you can have a better illustration of it. The story is also there on the front page of the leadership, immediately below the nameplate. The paper writes, 12 pupils dead, 45 rescued in Lagos building collapse. Kirian.
All right, and the other 3 papers with me also carried that report. And let's go to the New Telegraph newspaper. Captured this way. The lead story says, pregnant woman, pupils, school proprietress, others die. With 4 riders, tears as month-old babies die. Parents storm hospitals. My sisters, 3 children under the rubble, cries a woman. Birthday boy still trapped as teacher phones from under rubble. You can get that on pages 7, 8, and 9. And of course, you can see the photograph, the rescue photographs there. And you can imagine how the parents of the children and what felt on that sad day. And now let's turn to the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun newspaper also captured that sad story, and it started this way. Lagos, sad day. 12 school kids killed in building collapse, leaving residents in sorrow. Tears. Ambode orders probe. Building harboured school, shops, others. Buhari mourns. It's on page 39. And of course, the Daily Trust also captured that incident this way. Daily Trust newspaper, a lead story. How school children died in Lagos building collapse. 40 people pulled out alive, officials say. Let's turn to Bayo now, who just joined us. Bayo, good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Kirian. Good morning, Kirian. Good morning.
And of course, you have had us reading
yes.
The headlines.
Everybody across the nation that heard the story yesterday held their breath, particularly when the news broke that it contained a school and there were pupils. In fact, it was a 3-story building housing a school on one of its floors that collapsed at Mercy Street in Itafaji, Lagos. There are conflicting figures about that. Some papers earlier report 12 people died. Others are saying it is increased to 22. And the school was on the 2nd floor. And many of the people there were trapped in the rubbles. 45 people were rescued alive. And a parent who had 5 children in the school lamented, "I have not seen any of my 5 children. I am finished." Governor Akim Ambode was there, and he was particularly worried because sympathizers had gathered around and therefore obstructing rescue operations. And this is something that we have to address. Whenever we have incidents like that, you have people gathering to go and watch, and sometimes they constitute obstacles to rescue operations, and that has to be seriously addressed. And he said the identity, his deputy governor was already at the hospital to ensure that all victims were given treatment at the cost of the state government. He observed, however, that the building was a residential one that illegally accommodated a school. It was one of the buildings that has been marked for demolition. He said, going forward, all structurally defected buildings will be demolished. And President Muhammadu Buhari has also sympathized with the parents and relations of those who don't, wishing them God's comfort. He assured the governor of Lagos State that the federal government is pledging its support to offer assistance as may be required. It's a very sad development, but the incidence of collapsed buildings has become very notorious, particularly in Lagos. And if we look at the history of Lagos, Lagos is a very old city. Some of these buildings have been there for over 100 years, and many of them are very, very defective. But you have the challenge of owners trying to hold on to them, and sometimes they resist the development agency's initiative.
Is it just the owners?
Yes.
What about the proprietor or proprietress of the school who, after seeing the defects in that structure, decided to hire the place for school? So it is another aspect that should be examined. You have seen the building. The building is not healthy from all indications. Yet, you went and acquired it for the purpose of running a school where children, underage children, are supposed to be going to classes every day.
And experts also say that when you have a building that is meant for a school, it involves static movements, and frequent static movement is not the same requirement that they should have, like a residential area where people are staying, they come in and go. And thanks Providence, if that happened in the night, I understand some of the floors too were residents where people live in.
Residents and shops as well.
And shops.
So you have shops, residents, and then a school.
Well, it's unfortunate that this has again happened on Lagos Island. But Bayo, I don't think that the stories we hear from Lagos about building collapse on Lagos Island relate to the old buildings in Lagos. No. These are some of the horridly constructed buildings on Lagos Island. Those buildings are less than 50 years. The ones that have been collapsing on Lagos Island. And what you find is gross abuse of land use on Lagos Island. land use is precisely what we're talking about now. You have shops, you have resident apartments, you have a school on the same floor. What do you want to achieve? And then when you look at the buildings, whenever they pancake upon collapse, you look at the quality of materials that have been used. Governor Ambode said yesterday that a number of buildings on Lagos Island had been earmarked for demolition on account of the lack of integrity of those buildings. So, but they get resisted, of course, by the owners and pressure. So, as Nigerians will say sometimes, it probably will require a madman, to say, hey, listen, these buildings, on account of public safety concerns, these buildings have to go down. Are you with me? Otherwise, from time to time, you watch, usually during the rainy season. Yes. During the rainy season, you will see a building 4 or 5 stories. In fact, when you look at the buildings as you are driving into Lagos Island, usually on Kata Bridge, but more likely on Eko Bridge, you'll see how unsightly some of those structures look. You ask yourself, who gave approval for the construction of those buildings?
Is it just who gave approval? What about the regulatory authorities in Lagos State? And you just said that some of the buildings have been earmarked for demolition. Yes. How long will it take for an action, to be effected? Otherwise, if they had effected action on the demolition of such buildings, this incident would have happened in the first place.
Maybe what the authorities would need to do is to provide alternative accommodation.
Yes.
Because if you are demolishing a building, it doesn't mean that you are losing the land. That's one thing to recognize. Because there was a time Lagos came up with a policy that if there was a collapsed structure on any plot of land, apart from the prosecuting whoever was responsible, the owner of the property, the owner of the land would also forfeit that land. But in the case of buildings that lack integrity on Lagos Island, because it's a traditional area, if you like, what they would need to do would be to say, look for alternative accommodation in the meantime while you pull down those structures and give the specifications as to further.
Who will provide the accommodation?
No, it has to be the state government.
State government
has to be the state government. Yes.
Well, the challenge, however, is that if the owner of the house in the first instance now has a plot, how is he going to develop it? And these are some of the challenges. And sometimes some of them even go to court to try and stop the demolition.
No. I don't think that will arise, Bayo. I mean, okay, you have developed it now, three stories, and look at the catastrophe.
All right, at this point, let's go to other stories making the rounds and in the newspapers we have this morning. Let's return to Daily Trust newspaper. Below the nameplate of Daily Trust newspaper, we have some stories there. Of course, this one has been in the air for a long time. Boeing grounds 737 MAX planes. That's on page 16. JAMB reschedules mock exams for April 1st. Page 3. Politicians resort to vote buying ahead of Kano rerun. Is on page 13. And just below the photograph on the front page of the Daily Trust, we have 22 killed in fresh Benungwari attack. It's on page 4. APC, PDP senators set to clash over post-militarization. And then we have how economic recovery plan expanded Nigeria's trade sector. It's on page 17 of Daily Trust.
All right, we'll take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. And by the way, the story on Boeing, it's also there on the front pages of virtually all the papers that we have this morning. Above the nameplate of the Nigerian Tribune, there's another story, pretty tragic. It comes with a kicker. Edo, gunmen killed DPO, pregnant officer, and 2 others in police station attack. And next to that is inconclusive polls. Protest rocks INEC headquarters. Youth, women take to the streets in Bauchi. And below the nameplate of the paper, we have this. Police arrest Oyo Assembly Chief Whip over Sugar's death. That's on page 31. Nigeria bans Boeing 737 MAX planes. And ICPC to seize 264 million naira properties from 3 civil servants. And very quickly also, from the Leadership newspaper, you have the story there on the front page. Federal government banning Boeing 737 MAX airplanes and approves new equipment for 4 airports. Lead story says reps to tinker with Electoral Act over inconclusive polls. May limit INEC's power to cancel elections. Senate to discuss flaws in polls, adjourns debate on budget. And PDP asks Commission to declare Abia North election inconclusive. And Bayo, let's take those stories first and then return to you.
Yes, Nigeria has taken the safety valve too of prohibiting the entry of 737 MAX 8 into the Nigerian airspace. This is part of the measures taken by many nations around the world, mostly China, United Kingdom, and Europe have also prohibited the entry of that aircraft into space. So far, it is only in the United States that is still using the 737 MAX 8 because they say so far there's no indication of any defect. They are continuing. But to play safe, many nations have been on the side of caution. You will recall that in the two incidences that have occurred, the one in Indonesia and Ethiopia, it was just minutes after takeoff. The plane could come in, and when it is taken off, that is when the fears are now heightened, concerned about whatever must be responsible for that. Though black box have been recovered, but there are no information from the AIB so far about what the causes are. The concern, however, that is coming is from the House of Representatives. Some lawmakers.
Bayo,
yes.
I'm sorry, I don't know whether you still want to get into the Boeing 737. Yes. By yesterday, the U.S. had also issued an order from President Trump grounding all Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft.
Okay. Yes. So 300 of them.
Yes, about there are about 347 such planes in service in different parts of the world, but in particular in the U.S.
436.
Yeah, in the U.S. Yes. Well, in the U.S., that's the latest. The Federal Aviation Authority was, of course, cautious in the first instance, giving assurance as to safety issues on the aircraft. But President Trump has already issued an order directing that further steps would need to be taken on the security as well as the glitches that have been observed on the 737, which ordinarily 737, not the MAX 8 or 9, is the workhorse of Boeing.
Yes, ideally. And Boeing itself is rattled, and they say they are also going to the works trying to find out what actually has happened. Meanwhile, the concern in the House of Representatives are some lawmakers, particularly a lawmaker from Kogi State, was sponsoring a motion of urgent and public importance, and he had threatened on the floor of the House. Sunday Karimi of Kogi State has declared that election inconclusive is at the stage of collation of votes are illegal, and therefore he had described it as a calculated attempt by INEC and his opposition parties to subvert democracy, and he's threatening violence. Similarly, another member by name Ali Madaki of Kano has also said that inconclusive elections is capable of throwing the Kano state into chaos. And he said we must resist that, and Nigeria will burn if they insist. Now, these are the kind of threats that is very unbecoming. You will recall that Kogi State was one of the states that recorded violence and death during the last state governorship and state house of assembly elections. Similarly, only 2 days ago, the Emir of Kano had called on peace over the inconclusive election. And now for a member of House of Rep or the National Assembly, though he's covered by qualified or absolute privilege or whatever he says on the floor, but he has to take note of the proverbial bird that call for a rain. He's not completely, may not necessarily escape the rain. Exactly. Particularly also that what happened in Bauchi yesterday, some 5 persons have been reported killed, several others injured as a result of violence from the same gubernatorial and state house of assembly election. Political thugs went on rampage, protesting along the street. And what were they doing? They were extorting money from road users and snatching handsets. And late into the night, gang groups of thugs belonging to political parties went on the clash. So much so that the public relations officer for Bauchi State Command, GSP, what is his name now, has now said that the situation is being brought under control and 9 suspects have so far been arrested. So there must be concern about our legislators. They are honorable members, and they must be honorable in their pronouncement because the politicians and the voters tend to see them as role models, and when they call for violence, it becomes a matter of a trigger for their thugs.
As you rightly said, Bayo, I mean, it's unacceptable.
Yes.
To call for a resort to self-help when you have avenues to seek redress. Kirian, just before you go, this story I read, and I'm sure you also have, it's also there on the front page of the Punch newspaper, with regard to the incident that occurred in Edo State, a place called Afuzo. It's in Edo North Senatorial District, where a police station was attacked by heavily armed men or persons. The DPO, the DCO, a pregnant police officer, they were killed. What is curious about it, and I think this is part of what the security agencies should try to focus on, the elections are over. Now, the assailants were said to have also visited the INEC office in Afuze and tried to, attack the INEC office. The elections are over. Several vehicles were burnt and also destroyed, damaged on the INEC premises, as well as the police station.
But the question to ask, Kinsley, is was that attack as a result of the election? Is it an aftermath of the election? Or are there normal criminals, who are operating in that state? Because going to attack the police station, which has nothing to do with the election that has been over, is questionable. And as a matter of fact, is a big issue. If a police station can be successfully attacked by hoodlums.
Yeah, but what I'm just saying is, look more closely and you might find a signature of a terror attack in what has happened.
It's not impossible. Afuze used to be a home of sports development, and it was for the forefront of sports development in the Dembelde State, you remember. And it's sad that this is happening there. When police stations are attacked, you recall the last time police stations were attacked so viciously was in the Offa robbery. And there, as many as 9 policemen were killed. But I trust one thing, the current acting Inspector General of Police does not allow assault on policemen to go free. What happened in Bayelsa, you remember, where a deputy commissioner of police was assaulted? They have been on the trail of the persons and they will hunt them down.
All right, now let's go to the editorial for today, taken from Daily Independent newspaper on page 16. Nigeria stemming the wave of oil theft. The rising incidence of crude oil theft is not only getting out of hand, but it's costing Nigeria staggering sums and must be nipped immediately by the current administration. The cabal responsible for the leakage must be smashed, and the sundry measures required for tackling the problem put in place. Bayo, briefly.
Yes, oil theft is something that has bedeviled Nigeria for a long time. So much so that among sometimes we export about 1.2 million barrels a day that we produce. A lot of it is stolen. But just not about three months ago, the NNPC gave an indication that it now has a system by which it can monitor all the quantum of the oil produced in Nigeria. With that signature identity, it can now know the quantity that leaves Nigeria and can also trace Nigerian oil around the world market. That is a positive development that can go a long way to reducing the oil theft that is going on. Other than that, this pilfering has been going on. Nigeria is losing a lot of resources by way of that kind of theft.
Some people are living big from that for many years now. At this point, I would like to appreciate your analysis of the stories making the rounds in today's national dailies in Nigeria. This is Good Morning Nigeria. Well, Kinsley will now take us to Lagos, where we are going to be speaking with our correspondent on the collapse building in Lagos. Kinsley.
That's right. You can see our correspondent on the right side is Paul Obukago. Is at the scene of the building collapse that occurred yesterday in the Tafaji area of Lagos Island. Hi, Paul. If you can hear us, give us an update on the rescue or salvage efforts at the scene of the building collapse yesterday.
We understand they've not been able to actually give us the exact figure of people rescued, but the information I have right now is that over 20 persons have been rescued. I have with me the Assistant Superintendent Fire Service, who was here all through the night, and is here to give us further data concerning what they've done so far. The rubble of the building is what is being finally evacuated from the scene. So Joshua Young is right here with me, and I want to ask him some few questions on what they've done so far. Yes, Joshua, can you talk to us on what people have done so far?
Good morning. As at last night, when the crowd was finally controlled, were able to continue job because initially there were some disruptions. But we've been able to, around 2 o'clock, rescue one other victim, a male, who may said to be a dispatch rider or an Okada rider, either. Though his rescue suspected, and after which many other women came and they were saying their children are entrapped in trouble. But so far we have made use of the excavators available to try and see if we can rescue other children that are said to have been trapped. Honestly speaking, as I comment on this issue, all hands have been on, and all efforts have proved after fruitless to other people, because with the look of things, there is no child that is assumed to have been entrapped. Because we have checked all the looks and corners of the building, and I'm still speaking. There is no trace of any still. Though we've not finally left, we are still trying to see that we evacuate all the remaining rooms before we left. So we've been here since yesterday.
Okay, still we are concerned about the number of occupants of the building at the time of this incident. Do you have any clue about it?
The truth about it is that since the third floor is said to have been occupied by school, the second floor rested. They also saw a business center, and the ground floor shut for pet trading. You know, in the morning, nobody was able to give out exact numbers of people, those in the business center that were in the building, and then the residents, because it's early in the morning, some of them have left for their respective place of work, and then some of the shops were not yet open. So nobody gave us the exact data. They has is position to tell the exact people that were in the building. Even the school that is the talk of the town, because we are told that some of the students went for excursion. So the school on her own cannot say the exact number of children that were there, because it's like they don't have database.
Okay, we also understand that the owner of the building was not around, but his wife, children and grandchildren in when the incident happened. Were you able to verify that?
Yes, we are told that the owner of the building was not around, but the wife, the children, some of them were around. We rescued an elderly woman alive, and later rescued a woman and her child. But the husband of two was in the building. Unfortunately, when he was finally rescued, he was substantially dead.
Okay, what about a woman who was pregnant?
Yes, that woman initially she was rescued, but the news that later was around 3 a.m. the morning was that she gave up.
Okay, I've been speaking with an assistant superintendent of fire service from the scene of the incident. The plan by the emergency workers here is that at about 8 a.m. they are going to give us an update, and that's why the general manager of the Lagos State Emergency Management Agency is going to be doing that. He's not willing to talk to us now, but at 8 a.m. they are going to address the media.
All right, Paul, let me just ask you this. We wonder if you have any information from the government of Lagos State with respect to what the government intends to do because of this collapse. We also understand that that building was among those mapped out for demolition in the past, but that didn't happen. So what is the position of Lagos State government in respect of this?
Is that the Lagos State government is setting up a committee to look into the immediate cause behind the collapse of the building. But one other thing again is that people in the neighborhood actually said quite a number of buildings in this area have been marked for demolition by the state government. But they are a little bit surprised that action has not been taken, to really bring down the structures that are structurally stemmed to be defective up at the time this incident occurred yesterday.
I was wondering, Paul, the fire service officer is with you there. Are they using any other aids, such as sniffer dogs, to try to ascertain whether anyone might still be under the rubble, other than just relying on their 5 senses?
Sniffer dogs in this area this morning. All we saw was a combined team of federal agencies and state agencies working together with some medical crew. That's what we saw. But I want to ask the fire service official if there was anything like that. Did you people use sniffer dogs to actually maybe go around the environment to know if we have people in the rubble?
The dogs were actually brought from the dog section of the Nigerian Police Force. Dogs were actually brought, but they are used for security purpose, not for sniffing. So no single dog was taken round to sniffer to see if there is person or there are persons entrapped in the building. But dogs were brought for security purpose to scare people, to enable of people to work, but they were not used for what they are said to have been brought for. Okay.
Correspondent Paul Omukago reporting live from the scene of the building collapse yesterday on Lagos Island. We'd like to thank you for being with us on Good Morning Nigeria, and of course our viewers can look forward to more reports from that particular incident.
And Chris, you were asking about the sniffer dogs. Yes. What kind of training do the dogs of the police use are given? What kind of training are they given? Are they really trained to do that job, or is it just for security reasons? That's a good question to ask.
Yes, that's you have different types of training. The canine department or division of the police normally will have that for their different purposes. But sniffer dogs, you find that they are often used in situations like this.
Exactly.
They're hard to reach locations where you have a building collapse, because they can sniff out, the presence of a human being either by breath or some other device. That's the kind of training that the dogs normally would receive. But if you just brought the dogs merely for security, I don't think that suffices. Exactly. All right, but let's hope that they will up their game and then try to find out if there are persons buried beneath the rubble of that structure that pancaked on Lagos Island yesterday. We'll take a short break now. When we return, of course, we'll be talking about a review of security during the general elections.
A new edition of TV Guide is out with special focus on the role of the media in election coverage. Exclusive on the National Broadcasting Commission, its mandate as the sole regulator of Nigerian media. Dr. Toba Daba then and Ishat Modibo Kawu now. This edition also features the king of stand-up comedy in Nigeria, Ali Baba. NTA standards to be ready for election transmission after decades of abandonment. Find out from the DG transactional elections in our political space, an evil wind that blows no good. DG, National Orientation Agency Council. TV Guide, your indispensable companion, x-rays the impact of social media on electioneering process as electorates present their expectations from incoming government. Meet some TV professionals behind the screen and other inspiring stories in sports, entertainment, and lots more. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or NTA stations nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion.
are watching NTA, Nigerian Television Authority. For more information and news updates, visit our website at www.nta.ng, or you can follow us on Twitter at NTA News Now, or you can like us on Facebook at NTA Network News. Stay connected on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/NTA News Online. Watch our live stream at www.nta.ng/live. NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Nigerians. Suicide bombers are not spirits. They are not ghosts. They are human beings like you and me. They live amongst us. They are your neighbors. They are your friends today, but terrorists tomorrow. So you must know your neighbor now. Security begins with you and me. Know your neighbor. Be vigilant. Be security conscious. Report suspicious persons, objects, and movements to the police and other security agencies. The security of our nation is a duty for you and me.
If you see something, say something. Nigeria, unite against terrorism.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
And you are still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Our focus today is security challenges of the 2019 general elections, and to set the tone for our conversation, let's take this report put together by correspondent Kunle Adeyeye.
The Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) before the 2019 general elections called for a new approach in the deployment of security personnel. The commission emphasized that its experience from the off-season elections since 2015 necessitated a new approach to security deployment. The new approach perhaps did little to enhance security during the 2019 general elections, which were still characterized by ballot snatching, attack on prospective voters, and even electoral personnel, leading to death on some occasions. Pockets of violence were recorded during the February 23, 2019 presidential election and National Assembly election in Delta State. Rivers State was also a flashpoint, and governorship election has been suspended in the state owing to unabated electoral crisis not unconnected to security. Oyo State was also in the news as it had its own share of electoral violence. Security agents themselves were not spared either, as some of them were victims of electoral violence. The case of political thugs posing as security operatives was also in the news. What accounted for security challenges during the elections? What was the place of intelligence gathering? Are there offenders arrested, and will they face prosecution? Should the entire security architecture for elections be redesigned? Guests on Good Morning Nigeria are waiting to provide answers.
All right, thank you very much, Kunle Adeyeye, for that background. Now, joining us to discuss this issue in greater detail, would like to welcome our guests here in the Abuja studios, as well as at our other network centers. First, the former Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba. Pleasure to have you on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, and also here with us is our regular security analyst, a security risk expert, Kabir Adamu. Pleasure to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Pleasure is mine. Good morning. Thank you.
Okay, clear?
And from Port Harcourt studio, we have Dr. Chris Ekir, a public affairs analyst and former president, Ijaw Youth Council. Good morning and welcome to our program.
Good morning, Kiri.
All right, and from our Lagos Network Center, we have Mr. Emperor Chris Ibe, who is a politician, social activist, and entrepreneur. It's good to have you on our show this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kirian.
Chrisley.
Yes, that's Mr. Emperor in Lagos.
Yes.
Okay, but let's begin the conversation from our Abuja studios. Suleiman Abba, of course, is the former Inspector General of Police, and he was the Inspector General of Police during the 2015 general elections. Here we are reviewing the security issues arising from the 2019 general elections. What is your assessment?
Well, it is true the security agencies have the responsibility of providing efficient security for the conduct of national elections. And I also want to believe that all the security agencies did their best, particularly in preparing themselves to the national assignment. It's also unfortunate that due to inadequacies, perhaps in the electoral process generally, not only from the security side of it, we had a lot of security challenges. Be that as it may, let me also say that they did their best at the end of the day. Some of these inadequacies may also arise or might have arisen from the lack of adequate preparedness of INEC itself. A situation where tension is allowed to arise from, the electorate, and you begin to see tension, and at the end of the day, politicians become dissatisfied and begin to, recruit thugs who threaten the conduct of the election itself or threaten the results as it may. I think we all have blames to share. All stakeholders have blames to share, really.
All right, thank you. Obviously, we'll come back to you as we make progress in this conversation. Now, let's turn to Kabir Ademo. Kabir, the police assured Nigerians of adequate policing prior to this election, more so when they also co-opted other security agencies, to give the support required. But what really went wrong? And in fact, what's your assessment?
Let me give a bit of context to how INEC manages security. INEC has invested a lot in security. The most modern tool for managing security is called Enterprise Security Risk Management. Now, INEC got a tool on enterprise security risk management from an International Institute for Democracy and Electoral Support, which is a Norwegian-based institute. It has an electoral security risk management tool it helps developing countries and even the developed countries with. So INEC bought into that tool, which, like I said, is the most modern tool in managing security. It provides two bases. One for internal electoral processes, and then the other one for the external electoral processes. So very good. The second component with which INEC manages security is the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, which is chaired by the INEC chairman himself. In terms of coordination, as far as I know, because there's an argument here and there, the coordination is done by the IG of police and I think the National Security Advisor. And there are about 24 government organizations within that committee, including the police, which, like I said, is coordinating the activities of that committee, and then down to the Central Bank of Nigeria, where some of the critical assets for the electoral processes are kept. So several organizations. To answer your question directly, and with the benefit of hindsight, after having reviewed, even though it's a post-mortem review of the elections, both the presidential and National Assembly elections and the governorship and state assembly elections, I think the missing element that I saw is one of coordination. Like I said, there were 24 agencies, but what I noticed was that they were all operating in silos. There was no, synergy between their operations, because at the end of the day, the efficacy of the process will be determined by how many incidences were recorded. If we're sitting here and discussing that about 500 plus people died from the beginning of the campaign season till the last elections. In fact, even yesterday, there were two major incidences that were recorded, one in Bauchi, and I think the other one in Edo State, where a police division, and I think the INEC premises were burned in Edo, and then in Bauchi, it was a protest by talks that led to death. So if we look at all of this together and place it side by side with these two platforms that INEC has provided, I think, unfortunately, the answer is that in terms of marking success or no success, I would unfortunately say there was a failure in terms of the capacity of the functions of this department in managing security, and the reason is there was no coordination in their functions. Budget monies were released, we know that. A lot of preparation was done. I personally, and I'm sure my co-discussant would agree with me, several training sessions were undergone. I know several police departments on electoral security management. Handbooks on that were released. The military did its own component. But how do you bring all of this together to support the function of INEC? That was the missing element. We can go further to also ask the question, the department in INEC that is supposed to ensure the coordination of this function, was there a failure in that department, a failure of capacity, or was the person who was supposed to ensure that these departments, these 24 organizations that I mentioned work together, did he lack the capacity? I've heard the narrative that the military will never subject itself to a civilian leadership. That's a possibility. So does it mean, for instance, that if the INEC chair is appointing the director of security, he must look for a person that has the charisma to work very well with the Chief of Army Staff, so that the military, for instance, subject itself to the authority of INEC? These are questions that we must ponder. The big elephant in the room, which I hope we'll discuss in the course of our conversation, is intelligence, unfortunately.
Absolutely, Kabir. Thanks a lot. Of course, we'll come back to you. Let's go over to Dr. Chris Ekiyo, the former president of the Joy Youth Council, who is joining us, of course, from our Port Harcourt Network Center. Dr. Chris Ekiyo, give us your assessment of the security management and outcomes for the general elections.
Thank you. I think that I'd like to cue in from Kabiru. Primarily, what had happened is that it was a nobody's call. Police trying to take charge, and the military saying, no, we're in control. And then you have other security agencies also doing the same thing. And above all, I think that what really created the breach more in the security was the unnecessary delays in providing results that people already have insight about. The process is so transparent. INEC had improved in the electioneering processes, so you could just vote, walk away, and at the spot, people know what they have done and they see the outcome of the result. Now, the gap between point A and point B creates a lot of tension between electorates and politicians. And then the show of force, unnecessary show of military in certain sections also raised frail nerves, and those were primarily cause for breakdown of law and order. However, because nobody was calling the shot in most of these centers, it became very clear that even among security agents, there were conflicts. And once the citizens cannot trust the provide security, they tend to take responsibility for themselves and further deepening conflict because they're not trained to do so. And I think that going further, we must de-escalate the emphasis on heavy armed men for a simple process like voting. In my own local government, we barely didn't even notice the presence of the military. Voting was just seamless because citizens took responsibility and followed up with their results, and the military and police didn't just begin to confront civilians. So it was seamless. So there must be this synergy between the agencies that are conducting the election being open and transparent for citizens to have confidence in the process, and the security agency also, because the Electoral Act is also very clear. In some cases, they actually went beyond their mandate, creating conflict in this process.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Chris Ekiyo. Let's now go over to Lagos, where we have Mr. Emperor Chris Ibe. Chris Ibe, you are in Lagos, and I guess you were in Lagos during the elections. Dr. Ekio highlighted some key issues, such as a show of force, lack of coordination, inter-agency conflict in terms of who calls the shot. What is your own assessment with respect to security during the elections? All right, we may be having difficulties along our audio lines to Lagos, so I'm not sure Mr. Emperor heard me. Well, in that case, we return to the studio, and we still have the former Inspector General of Police here, Suleiman Abba, with us. Considering what Dr. Akil said a short while ago, that has to do with the interagency conflict. When you have different agencies in the security architecture of Nigeria, and they cannot work amicably in a particular situation, what does that mean to you?
Well, I don't want to first and foremost completely agree that lack of coordination between security agencies was responsible mainly for, the security challenges that we had in our national elections this time around. I want to believe, and is in existence, there is a committee, the ISIS, at the national level and at the state level. Yes, at the state level, the resident commissioner and the commissioner of police jointly chair that committee. And I think action is more at the state level than we had at the national level. Of course, the office of the NSA and the INEC chairman coordinate the activities of the committee at the national level. And I also want to say that the police is solely responsible, statutorily, for the provision of security in elections generally. And I want to believe that they lived up to that responsibility of leading other agencies, in providing security for the conduct of the elections. And I have not seen a report where security agencies were directly in conflict with themselves, other than perhaps what is being portrayed in perhaps Rivers, where doctors seem to be reporting that the military seem to be in charge. And I also want to believe you can't say the military are in charge because the military are never deployed to polling units. Rather, they take the responsibility, of providing security at areas where you have militancy or threats to the general conduct of the election or to the community itself. So I really cannot accept the fact that the lack of coordination between agencies was responsible for security challenges during the conduct of the elections.
Could that be responsible in some parts of the country, especially from where he came from?
I wish you can cite one. I was Commissioner of Police in Rivers, and I was Commissioner of Police in Lagos when 2011 elections was conducted. And just like you said, I was the Inspector General of Police in 2015 when national elections were conducted. You hardly can cite a situation where security agencies, confront themselves in the conduct of or the provision of security in any election. I can agree with the fact that there could be inadequacy of security personnel themselves at the polling units. I can also accept the fact that there are inadequacies in the law itself, the Electoral Act itself, with regards to who takes charge in making decisions on matters affecting security or matters affecting the conduct of the election itself at the polling unit. Because the law provides that it is the electoral officer at the polling unit who makes decision with regards to an offense committed. Now, remember, even if it is an offense threatening security, the security of the conduct of the election itself, it is that electoral officer who has the responsibility to make that decision. For example, it is the electoral officer who will say, this man has committed an offense, arrest him. Of course, the police officer can arrest him, but it is the electoral officer who will decide whether the conduct is enough for that police officer to take him away from the place.
Well, I would like to go to Chris Keo in Port Harcourt to provide examples of the kind of lack of coordination that Kabiru Adamu talked about. The former Inspector General of Police has raised a number of points, but Chris Keo, what's your immediate response? Because the former IG doesn't appear to agree with your proposition.
Thank you. While I'm not going to say we're in a debate, I'm saying things as they played out before my very eyes in certain areas where elections held and reports we got from people who are very close to us in the Niger Delta area. I do not know what may have transpired in all. I had said in my own local government it was seamless because the police and the military were even not seen, we were coordinated. But I'm aware that in places like Obiakbo, where a captain went to the local collation center with a team of military men, and a CSP was trying his best to talk to the captain, and the captain would not listen, and he took the area commander to CSPU to protect the collation officer, who the IG is saying is supposed to be the one to say, arrest someone. She locked herself up in the toilet, and SPUs were protecting her. That is an interagency conflict. A situation where a military man beats up a police officer, a military man in a military uniform beats up a police officer with a police uniform. It's a conflict. A situation where the DSS is complaining that the police isn't listening to them, and that's why there's a conflict, and we're hearing that is a conflict. But I have not hinged that as the sole bane for what happened in terms of security breach. I've said that INEC is culpable because, one, the process of announcing results, delayed announcement, and collation created tension and agitations from citizens who became restless and began to push to get to know what had happened even after voted. That kind of tension will stimulate a response from security agencies, thereby causing a conflict. So it's a mix of citizens, INEC, and the security agency. I agree with the IG totally. It is police to police election processes. So the question is, how did the military get involved? That's where we need to begin to look at laws to tweak what roles the military will play. The army is trained to shoot to kill, not trained to police people. And the army is trained to deal with territorial challenges. We have enough in terms of terrorism. What I think that we should be doing going forward is to recruit more policemen. We don't have enough policemen. We just talked about the attack in Afuzi, where armed men will run into a police station and shoot dead a DPO. Someone was paid his price for national service. The only reason that happened is that station does not have manpower. People know about it. So we need to improve on policing, improve on manpower in the police, improve on even the firepower and training of the policemen, so they're able to take responsibility. We also need to, I heard Kabiru say that the military doesn't seem to want to subject himself or themselves to civil authority. No, it is wrong. Constitutionally, the president is a civilian and is commander-in-chief. And therefore, if he sends his army out, they must know that they are responsible for their citizens. Armies of countries don't shoot their citizens. They defend their citizens. They die for their citizens. In Nigeria, the reverse is the case. Oftentimes, once they have the slightest opportunity, rather than allow the regular police intervene, there's a show of force. And when the police see, there is this interagency conflict. And it's not just between the police and the army. Police, army, road safety, civil defense. In fact, in a particular case in Bayelsa, a civil defense shot a police officer. So this may not be only around election areas. It's an everyday occurrence in conflict. And I think that the security agencies must understand that they are to work as for national security and peace. And the IG must know, he knows, that in 2015, when Ombu was CP before 2015, when Ombu was CP in Rivers, there was a lot of conflict between the CP and the brigade commander over who chairs the Security Council meeting in the state. where it is supposed to be the police officer and the brigade Ombu keep having this back and forth conflict. He knows that these things existed between police and the military, and they must find a way to smoothen it out so we all know where to go. We cannot continue to bury our head in shame and say it is fine, there's no interagency conflict. There is. But what really created the problem for the election is that INEC was micromanaging the process and creating tension among electorates who would demand for results to be announced as being collated. And that was the major bane of all the conflicts you saw in the elections.
All right, we appreciate your comment on this very issue, which of course, Kingsley, it should be a topic for another day, the interagency conflict, not just during elections, but in the day-to-day functions and responsibilities of these agencies. Now, let's go back to Lagos, where we have Emperor Chris Ibe. I hope you can hear me very clearly now. And I'm also sure that you've listened to other panelists on this particular program on the issue of security during the 2019 general election. And you are in Lagos, and I'm certain you also you were there during the election. So what's your take on the security lapses in that election that led to several conflicts, agitations, and what have you?
Thank you, Kriya. I like to approach it differently, from a different perspective, different context, not really the way they have discussed it. Yes, I am out of here in Lagos, but during the election, particularly the National Assembly and the presidential election, it was in my state, Enugu State. Approaching this thing in the different context, is, first of all, we have to do proper prognosis of why we're having challenges, security challenges. Is that the real thing? Is there anything underpinning it? Is there any reason why we're having all this conflict here and there? And the answer is yes. Our electoral process needs to be properly and strengthened and approached differently so that people don't go into conflicts resulting into all the security challenges that we have witnessed. I think that adopting a new strategy to election can eliminate some of these things we're facing today. In my industry, I am from the oil and gas industry, upstream particularly. That's what the IOCs call go zero to fatality. And fatality means when you are in an operation and that's an incident involving life. They will tell you they don't want to see any fatality in their work site. They will tell you they don't want to see any fatality in an area of operation. So in 2019, for example, they can say they go zero. We do not want to have any incident or accident. So can we set that as a standard in our Nigerian politics and the way we approach politics? Why do we have thugs? Why do we have to have military? Why do we have to have police? And why do we have to have paramilitaries participating in Nigerian politics? It's simply interest. Of course, inadequacy of policing, inadequacy of effective police coverage or security coverage in various election points would definitely cause security breach. I take my local government, particularly, for example, my local government, Ogu local government in Enugu State. We have some flashpoints. We noted very serious flashpoints in the state. We noted very serious flashpoints in my local government. These particular flashpoints, or those particular flashpoints, were made known to the police authorities by my very person, were made known to the DSS, were made known to the military. Rather than being being proactive, the security agencies would rather be reactive. And that's one of the challenges we're having. And again, what is the electoral process? Can we change the electoral process we have in Nigeria? Can we change the mode of distribution of materials. Because from day one, once there's an election, we'll start facing challenges from the distribution of materials, electoral materials. Parties, party agents, party representatives, all jostling to take over materials, all trying to hijack materials. Can we approach that differently? Can we even say that, hey, we must not transport materials all at the same time to a certain point in various states before distribution of those materials? Because this is where the problem starts. Everybody wants to hijack the material. People want to take position of the sensitive materials. One party agent is struggling over the other party agent, and in the milieu of the confusion, people engage in thuggery. People engage in all manner of banditry acts, and the police are overwhelmed. I agree with my brother Chris from Port Harcourt, who had actually captured it very, very well, that the police are overwhelmed. The military is even are not supposed to be around where you have the election going on. We have incidences that when it occurred, we alerted the security men. I mean, we have, okay, in my local government, we have hinterlands that are not accessible by the police, that are not accessible by the military, that are not accessible by the DSS. You have an emergency call that they are being attacked. You have an emergency call that ballot boxes are being snatched. You have an emergency call that certain situation is going on there. Police will not get there on time. And most times, it then borders on who is reporting this matter. Are they working with the police? Are the police working with a certain party in the state? Like, my state is predominantly PDP. Are they working with PDP, for example, in my state to deliver the state to PDP? And when an APC person calls for an intervention, you see a foot dragging, you see sluggishness, you see slow response on the part of the security. And before then, they would have meted, I mean, some kind of injuries on, harmless individuals and armless individuals that are there to vote. So I believe that we need to do a proper prognosis. We need to sit down and do a post-mortem. And it's not just about talking. We believe so much in talking in Nigeria. My approach is we should be more reactive. We should be more proactive than always reactive. We have security challenges everywhere. In Anambra State, for example, I'm aware of a certain community where they shot 2 persons dead. I'm aware of the House of Assembly, House of Representatives member who had gone to the IG of police because at the point I happened to be in Abuja. And I was privileged to the information. He had gone to the IG of police to report about certain individuals competing against him, the intent and their plans to overwhelm them with thugs. And he demanded that police be effectively sent, that area be effectively manned by security agencies to ward off those thugs. But disappointingly, that did not happen. Instead, what we witnessed in that community called Obosi was the loss of 2 lives. 2 young men were hacked down. The hoodlums came from another community that would take them about 20 minutes, 30 minutes drive to get to the community. But they got there, of course, they overpowered everybody. Like again, someone said, there was an attack at the police station yesterday in Abuja. Why would that happen? Number 1, lack of firepower. Number 2, lack of adequate manpower. Number 3, lack of information, adequate information, intelligence gathering. Why would a police station be attacked? If hoodlums can attack a police station, then who is safe? So what everybody is saying here, and I will approach it from the standpoint of my experience in business, is to really plan. Because if you don't plan well, I am of the opinion that a certain police department be set up for election monitoring and election coverage. Just like you have the SPUs for VIPs, or you have the anti-riot men to quell riots wherever it occurs, which you have a certain department of the Nigerian police that are trained specifically to monitor elections.
All right, Mr. Chris Ibe, thank you very much. We'll come back to you later in the course of the conversation. Let's bring in again Kabir Adamu. Kabir Adamu, of course, you've listened to the other guests. We continue from where you stopped earlier. 2 points you made. One, the apparent lack of coordination amongst the agencies on account of interagency rivalry. And what would appear to be the most, perhaps, I mean, from the layman's perspective, probably the most potent. Why were all these attacks and assaults occurring without them being prevented? Was there a failure of intelligence? Or if there was intelligence, was intelligence not properly shared or properly utilized?
I'll start with the common saying, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, which is the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. When INEC, in its wisdom, came up with the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security, I guess that was what it was thinking. If you give just one agency, for instance, the police, the responsibility of election security management, it will fail woefully. For a lot of reasons. The inadequacies within the police pre-election will not just fly away during election and post-election. There are inadequacies that we have to contend with because they are there. And we've mentioned some of them, lack of personnel, lack of firepower. So how best to reduce that inadequacy? Bring all the agencies together. So INEC did that, but unfortunately, we didn't see a concerted effort. We can take it further by discussing intelligence. Almost all the organizations within ISIS have the capacity to generate intelligence. The police has that capacity, the DSS has that capacity. Time will not allow us, but we could discuss in details the functions of each agency which is within the framework of the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. To that extent, I would want to correct the impression given by Dr. Chris in Port Harcourt. The military has a mandate under the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security as we stand today. I want our listeners to understand that it has a mandate that is spelled out in clear terms. But the mandate does not allow it, for instance, to be deployed at the polling unit. There is another agency or other agencies that have those mandates. So bring all of this together, all the functions of the 24 agencies within the Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security. The result will be a good and proper security management of the elections. Now, they generate intelligence, they pool that intelligence, and they put it out there for usage by all of them. So the examples given by the two Chris in Lagos and Chris in Port Harcourt, of talks, for instance, attacking a particular location. Let's say the DSS picks up that intelligence. Does it have a personnel in that location? Probably no. But the civil defense probably has personnel in that department. Now, let's say we have a framework. Today, there is technology that will allow that. You can set up a seamless platform where such information can be pooled, and then each of these agencies can draw from that information. They now deploy and prevent that attack from happening. Now, I'm sure you will agree with me, the function of intelligence is prevention. Once you allow the incident to happen and then you become reactive, there is a failure. So, like I said at the beginning, that is what I observed in terms of post-mortem. There was no coordination of effort between these organizations. When I say coordination of effort, I'm talking of working together as a group. Like at the beginning, I said the sum of the parts is greater than the whole. That is the efficacy of an organized framework like Interagency Consultative Committee on Electoral Security.
What could have happened? I want to ask the former IG this, because we had the incumbent Force Public Relations Officer, ACP Frank Umba, on Good Morning Nigeria a number of times, and immediately after the elections. He was also talking about the presence of a number of service personnel at the police, shall I say, command control center for the purposes of the election here in Abuja. At the state level. And at the state level. So what could have gone wrong? I mean, if they had this cooperation, say, let's say the big potatoes, the top brass, had this cooperation and collaboration, why did it appear that on the field there seemed to have a failure either to prevent or deal decisively with those matters without necessarily getting into the ugly spectacle of conflict, between this one or two of the services?
Well, let me still go on with my own view that there was adequate synergy amongst the security agencies. Incidents, yes, there were incidents. But to get to the source of the problem, I think we should look beyond the security agencies themselves. Lack of leadership in most of our communities, to me, is more responsible for the breakdown of law and order in some of these areas, particularly areas where we had these incidents, flash areas. And talking about perhaps the deployment of military, areas where the military were deployed for their own responsibilities other than coming to the polling units, you will see that are areas where, whether there is election or not, deployment of military is always there. Otherwise, there will be more security challenges that can affect other socio-economic activities of the people. But coming back to the issue of leadership in the conduct of election, there is no way, whether a committee is established by INEC at the national or state level, you cannot take away the responsibility of the police in being the leader in the provision of security to the conduct of elections. And I want to say that most of these incidents that happened, the police and other security agencies must have sourced their intelligence, and that is why you have more deployments in flashpoints areas. But then I still want us to look at the issue of who takes responsibility at the polling unit, who decides when an offense is committed. And this will take us, of course, to the second point of who also prosecutes offenders. Because you have to set examples. Once, let's say in 2015 elections, 2011 elections, where those offenders arrested, were they prosecuted adequately? Has that set example so that in 2019 we don't have that? You can see even with tough orders given, people still went ahead to snatch ballot boxes. Maybe in the belief that at the end of the day, nothing will happen to them. So there are many areas that we really need to look at, other than the issue of synergy perhaps between security agencies or maybe failure of intelligence. I want to believe that it is because there were adequate sourced intelligence, that's why we could identify flashpoint areas and make even or increase the deployments in those areas.
All right, sir. It's been nice listening to you. I'll respond to that question that borders on your constituency. Well, actually, we are deliberating on the security concerns of the 2019 general elections because, of course, you took a huge toll on the conduct of the elections. And prominent, amongst the skirmishes that we had was in Rivers State, where INEC suspended the entire process due to escalating security challenges. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We're taking a short break now. When we come back, we'll be continuing with the deliberation on the issue on ground for today. Stay with us.
Can I see your particulars, sir?
Officer, my particulars no dey here.
In that case, you'll have to come with me to the police station.
Officer, which levels? Where I for find you something make you take arrange your weekend.
What? Offense number 1, driving without particulars. Offense number 2, trying to bribe an officer of the law.
I won't harass Nigerians or take bribe. Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, well, welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's take the tweets that we have now, and quite a torrent of them. Festus Akimboyewa says, from the number of deaths and the level of violence associated with the 2019 general elections in some parts of the country, security is certainly an issue in the elections.
All right, from Sani Michael Omakoji, it is really unfortunate that we refuse to advance as a nation. Else, we don't need heavy security presence to conduct an election. We can have a system where people can vote with ATM, POS, phones, and other related devices. And in that case, you don't need too much security.
And this is coming from Igbatigbe Zekeri. 2019 elections were marred by insecurity, especially in the southern part of the country. All pointed to desperate politicians who would like to maneuver the system and have their way in winning elections. We can't win an election in a violent manner and expect good in return.
All right, from Delejak Solomon. Even though all is not perfect, the Nigerian military should be commended for its role in maintaining law and order during the election. Army should continue to live up to its promise to Nigerians by ensuring that its personnel are professional on electoral intervention in future polls.
Now, Chris Simeon says, well, the security operatives tried their best. I pray that they will do better in subsequent elections in years to come.
Then Mahmoud Bashiru Omeza, thumbs up to the security agencies who strived within to maintain peaceful atmosphere during the elections. Over 2,000 perpetrators arrested while trying to cause mayhem.
Raymond Kayode tweets, now, I must commend all our security personnel, but we need to look deeply into the issues of fake soldiers.
Now, Caleb Alonge says, only one police officer in charge of 3 polling units where I served as assistant presiding officer 1. Thank God for soldiers who escorted us to the collation center. If not, the story would have been different. Nigeria needs to recruit more police.
All right, Francis Jethro, I must say you guys are doing a great job on the topic. Thank you very much for the kudos.
Now, Ibrahim Modu Aji says, no doubt the 2019 general elections have largely characterized by violence, which resulted in killing. So sad. It is like violence has come to stay in our electoral process. Electronic voting is the only solution to prevent or reduce electoral violence.
This is from Terrell Abdul Karim Zakari. Now, the level of youth participation in electoral violence is of great concern. The government must step up action in addressing the level of unemployment and youth restiveness to reduce the trend. I mostly pity the youth who are being used to perpetrate violence. They really need education.
Stephen says security agencies should be commended for protection of lives during and after the elections.
Comrade Ungala says security agents deserve commendation. Otherwise, the whole election exercise would have been a problem.
Then Ahmed Ibrahim Idris, he says security is the first priority in general elections. All security agencies have fairly done the right thing, especially the police.
Now, Ibrahim Moduaje tweets, no matter how you engage security personnel to cover elections, if politicians refuse to change their habits of truncating the will of the people, you can't, of course, avoid electoral violence. There's need for serious attitudinal change amongst the political class.
Murtala Jabo, my advice is to the government is to provide logistics for elections security, because they have to move from one point to the other or for better monitoring. We conduct elections with security that has never prosecuted electoral offenders.
Cecilia Okoroma says, thank God we are no longer a nascent democracy, but now fully matured democratically. Politicians must grow up and stop the impunity.
Because if we remain nascent, that means
arrested development.
We have learned no lessons.
Absolutely.
Now, let's go to Port Harcourt, where we still have Dr. Chris Ekeo, who's a public affair analyst. Well, Chris, see, there's something that could be described as a worrisome and threatening act perpetrated by some politicians in many parts of the country during this election. And that actually has to do with coercion, kidnapping, assault of electoral officers, and in some cases, some say they were forced to announce result. And very significant was that of Imo West Senatorial District, where a returning officer publicly told Nigerians that he was coerced and, of course, made to announce a result under duress. Now, what is that import into our election? I think it's new now. It's a new trend where electoral officers are kidnapped, beaten up, and what have you.
All right, thank you. In all of this, if we are nationalistic and more patriotic, and those who seek office for service, not for the purpose of self-enrichment and grandiose illusion, would have less conflict in election processes. The problem has been that being a politician is a gateway to a super bumper meal ticket, and seemingly is desperate to remain in power or to take power from one another. In doing this, they have found pleasure in a lot of young people who are vulnerable to create a wealth of camps in communities or in societies that they can use to coerce, hijack ballot boxes, or cause fear in society. The case in point is what's happened in Isiokwu around Obodo, where both in the elections for 23rd and 9th, people just came and took away ballot boxes and no results came out of those places, and nothing is done about it. But the issue is about patriotism and nationalism, and this must go from the civilians to the military to the paramilitaries. We all must see country first. To integrate that in our senses, to say, look, democracy is for advancement of a country, and the people's mandate is what is being put on trust for politicians. But what is happening is politicians think that is a right to win and win at all costs. And this is at all levels. Unfortunately, we find in even the agencies that are supposed to be unbiased in certain levels. I heard the man from Enugu, my namesake in Lagos, saying that where if an agency is in favor of a particular party, they will not respond if the call was coming from the other party. Now, that is lack of patriotism. We're all commending the CP in Kano, being very neutral and being stern. And Nigerians know good things. So if any person is doing the right thing, whether it be a military officer, a police officer, an INEC officer, or a politician, Nigerians will identify that and they will not pretend about it. I think that we must begin to look at service into democratic offices as something that is a patriotic call to country. If we will do well. Overall, I can say there's thumbs up. There was an improvement between 2015 and now in terms of the way and manner which elections were conducted. And apart from the security skirmishes we find here and there, which I still insist were because of interagency conflict, more than people. It would have been the other way in places where there were no interagency conflict. There were no conflicts in terms of citizens killing one another. Apart from those places we find in Delta and Rivers where I had mentioned, where first there was a breakdown between interagency working together to checkmate hoodlums. So this created a window for those hoodlums to perpetuate whatever they were doing. And I think also beyond, I want to argue that we must begin to plan for a seamless system where we minimal rigging and minimal transportation of all these sensitive materials. For instance, everybody can walk to any bank and swipe their ATM card or a POS machine and swipe their ATM card and get their data uploaded and get their money taken. And the amount is reflecting your account, even if your account is in Bank 10. So I'm thinking that beyond just a card reader, I actually begin to go to a process where when you put the card reader, political parties are popped up, and you click on the party you're voting for, and you walk away. And that reads on the system at the unit, at the collection center, at INEC's office. So INEC is working with data as you slot in cards. People know they don't have to wait because they can monitor those results online and real time as they vote. There may be less gathering of people at voting center, and you can vote even for 3 days. even for 3 days. Early voters, those who want to vote on the election day, and those who are voting post-election, and the results are going is drawn, and a winner emerged seamlessly. Maybe we should advance to that level. Maybe we should get InterSwitch to work with INEC to develop softwares for that purpose, to reduce presence in polling units. And I think that will help some of those things we're looking at.
All right, Dr. Chris Akiyo, thank you very much. We know that electronic voting might still be some way to go. You were talking about ATM cards. I'm sure you're also familiar with the stories of how people go to the ATM to try to withdraw cash, and then you have some bad guys who are waiting for them. So if they clear all your ATM cards before election, which one are you going to use to vote? Well, Chris Akiyo, well, thank you very much. These are the issues, of course, that will have to be dealt with when we approach, the era of electronic voting. But back to our Abuja studios here, Kabir. One of our analysts earlier in the week, Dr. Kari, who was also an analyst for the Situation Room, said something that on the face of it, election-related violence appeared to have been more preponderant in the southern part of the country than in the north. Unfortunately, we didn't have enough time to interrogate that claim. What could have happened? There were some incidents in the north, but those incidents tended to have been bandit-related. As in Zamfara, for instance, or in Sokoto, where I think it was an ASP or DSP was killed on last weekend, and so on and so forth. But there seemed to have been more bloodletting in the southern part of the country than in the north. Have you observed this, and if so, what probably accounts for it?
In my personal dealings, my profession that I run, we keep a data set of incidences. We use that incidences to come up with trends and then analyze those trends, and on the basis of that come up with mitigation measures for our operations or the operations of our clients. So yes, we observed that incidences. There are a couple of reasons. The biggest one, and which has been emphasized in our discussions, is the conduct of the politicians themselves. I'm not saying, for instance, that there is a major difference between the conduct of politicians in the northern part of the country and in the southern part of the country. Unfortunately, when we mapped the threats across the federation and then the triggers of the violence, as well as the major actors of the security incidences, the number one factor that came forefront is the politicians themselves. I would say this repeatedly. They are the major threat to our democracy. It's ironical because they are the number one beneficiaries of the democratic era, but they are also the major threat. So in terms of the usage of talks to perpetrate violence, I think we saw a preponderance in the southern half of the country more than the northern part of the country, perhaps because of some actions taken by political leaders in the north. A good example is in Kaduna State, where the governor took some steps ahead of the elections. I will keep on making this point, that elections themselves magnify the challenges that we have in our society. For obvious reasons, it's a competition, and sometimes rogue elements within that competition will look for weaknesses within the system to perpetrate their interest. So in the case of Kaduna, he came up with laws to ban groups that are not registered. So we had the Sarasuka, vigilante groups that, even though are still in existence, but the capacity that they have to operate has been weakened because they are outlawed. There was an argument regarding why they should be outlawed. But go back to the southern half of the country, Rivers State as an example, Delta State, name them. In our crime mapping of incidences that occur, gang violence and militancy is the major threat in those regions. So when the elections came off, unfortunately, the political leaders used them, and that's why we saw more cases of inter-community attacks by talks against political ad hoc officials of INEC and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, let's return briefly to Suleiman Abba, who supervised the 2015 election as the IGP. Now, credibility of the polls cannot be separated from the security of the ballot. So invariably, the police is needed. Well, in your opinion, is Nigeria under-policed? Is Nigerian police incapacitated in some respect? do they need the kind of assistance they got from other agencies under the security architecture of this country? Pontificate on this, and let's understand what the police should look forward to doing before we get to 2023.
Maybe I should start from the issue of manpower. I think it's a common knowledge, and almost all experts or interest persons and groups seem to agree with the fact that the police is understaffed. This is the more reason why other security agencies like the immigration, the customs, the civil defense, even the fire service seem to join the police, in providing security at the polling stations. If we have enough police to deploy at least 2 to 3 personnel to each of the polling units, perhaps we may not have the need to call in other, security agencies to come in and support it. And maybe that would have taken care of the issue of perhaps the suspicion that we have that there are lack of synergy among security agencies. I think solutions can easily be provided. More personnel be recruited into the police, or merge some of the agencies that perform similar roles with the police. I can see clearly there are duplications. Simply merge. You have other agencies with over 100,000 personnel doing the same role with the police, the same police posts in the same local governments, in the same communities. It is a matter of choice for the, complainant to decide whether to go to the police or to go to the other agency. So, confusion, clearly. So that, I believe, can take care of the issue of the personnel. But what the police need to do ahead of other elections, do more to gather intelligence on threats to the conduct of the election. And, going back to the issue of why do we have more incidents in the South than the North during elections, I think it goes back to the issue I raised, the issue of leadership. So long as the youths do not have the right leadership and they are allowed to be lured into agitations and into militancy, which has continued to exist, perhaps more in Rivers and other Niger Delta states, the more we will have, threats to the conduct of elections. Until 2011, elections in most of those states are conducted in secrecy. The leader is decided not through the ballot boxes, not through the wish of, the registered electorate. Rather, it is the same political leaders who will hide somewhere and, decide who wins the elections.
Well, former IGP, one point, very quickly. We had flagged this on Good Morning Nigeria through our guests, that you were likely to have cases of impersonation of security officers in the course of the election. We know that from various cycles of election, fake uniforms will be produced. People will don these uniforms and then they will storm either the voting centers or polling units or the collation centers and wreak havoc. Why is it that it's a major challenge for the regular security agencies to fish out or prevent or otherwise deal decisively with those rogue elements in official uniforms?
Yes, it is because, and let me also say that I agree, fake uniforms, fake policemen, fake soldiers, like we saw some being arrested, only God knows the number of those that were deterred from coming out with those uniforms. So let it not be as if nothing was done, to prevent such occurrences. But let me also say that so long as security agencies will invest in intelligence gathering, determining the fact that there are youths, there are thugs that are, employed by politicians, and they have to be stopped in every way they can. As long as we are unable to do that, we will continue to have violence in our elections.
Thank you very much indeed. And of course, on that premise, we are concluding this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, I believe we have dealt with the topic as much as time can allow us. And at this point, we'd like to appreciate your contributions to the program. Kabir Adamu, security expert and a regular guy on this show. It's been nice having you today.
It's my pleasure.
All right, and of course, the former Inspector General of Police, Suleiman Abba. It's good talking to you this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you indeed.
All right. Well, we had Mr. Emperor Chris Ibe in Lagos. We thank him for his contribution, which, of course, he said he came from a different perspective. And Dr. Chris Ekeo, a public affairs analyst and former president of Ijo Youth Council. It's been nice talking to you this morning, Chris. Thank you indeed for reaching us from Port Harcourt. And it is on this note that we call it a day on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, hoping that you had a great time watching the program. My name is Kirian Umaya, wishing you the best of the day.
And I'm Kingsley Salama, thanking you also for being with us. We're back tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Have a nice day.